My Weirdest School, Book Number 4. Mrs. Meyer is on Fire. Written by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pelot. Chapter 7. Drill, Baby, Drill. Every day, Mr. Cooper tries to teach us how to do math. I don't know why. What's the point of learning math when we have calculators? Anyway, Mr. Cooper had just told us to turn to page 23 in our math books when lights started flashing and sirens started screaming, and you'll never believe in 1,100 years what happened next. No, Mrs. Meyer didn't come running into the doorway. Wrong again. Fire drill! Everybody started shouting. Yay! A fire drill is when we have to pretend there's a fire even though nothing is burning up. It's kind of like having an imaginary friend who you talk to but isn't really there. I used to have an imaginary friend named Johnny, but we got into an argument, and now we're not speaking to each other anymore. Fire drills are cool because we get to miss math and reading and other boring stuff. If you ask me, we should have a fire drill every day. We had to get up and walk single file out of the building. Mr. Cooper was the line leader. Alexia was the door holder. Everybody was goofing around because we knew it wasn't a real fire. If it was a real fire, I would have run out of there like a cheetah was chasing me. Walk quickly, kids, Mr. Cooper told us. No talking. We had to stand out on the playground for 1,100 hours because I guess that's how long it takes a school to burn down. So we were standing out there, minding our own business, and you'll never believe what I saw coming out of the cheese next to the playground. Smoke. Hey, look over there, I said, pointing toward the woods. It looks like a forest fire might be starting, yelled Andrea. Oh no, hollered Michael. Run for your lives, shouted Neil. We've got to do something, hollered Emily. That's right, yelled Ryan. Only all of us can prevent forest fires. Let's go, said Mr. Cooper as he pulled out his cell phone. I'll call the school and tell them to alert the fire department. We ran into the woods to see if we could put out the forest fire. And you'll never believe in 1,100 years what we found there. It was Mrs. Meyer. She was sitting next to a little campfire, holding a long stick with a hot dog at the end of it. What are you doing here, Mrs. Meyer? Asked Michael. What does it look like I'm doing? She replied. I'm cooking a hot dog. I never got to eat breakfast today. Did you make that fire with your own hands? Asked Alexia. Well, I couldn't make it with somebody else's hands, she said, taking a bite of her hot dog. Did any of you kids ever make a campfire? No, said Neil. No, said Andrea. No, said Emily. In case you were wondering, everybody was saying no. There are 3 things you need to make a fire, Mrs. Meyer told us as she took another bite of her hot dog. Can anybody name one of them? Lighter fluid, I shouted. You're partly right, AJ, she said. You need fuel, air, and heat. The fuel is needed for the fire to burn. The air is needed for the fire to breathe. And the heat is needed to keep the fire burning. If you get rid of any one of those 3 things, your fire will go out. Boy, she sure knew a lot about making a fire. She should get the Nobel Prize. That's a prize they give out to people who know how to make fires. Mrs. Meyer took the last bite of her hot dog. If fire is so dangerous, why would we want to make one? Asked Andrea. So you can toast marshmallows, silly, said Mrs. Meyer. Marshmallows. I love marshmallows. I can't think of anything in the world I love more than marshmallows. Well, maybe chocolate, and ice cream, and pizza. But I really like marshmallows too. Mrs. Meyer pulled out a big bag of them and gave each of us a pointy stick. She showed us how to hold the marshmallow over the fire and turn it really slowly so it gets browned on all sides. Toasty brown all around, Mrs. Meyer said. Repeat after me. Toasty brown all around. Toasty brown all around, we all chanted. I ate about 1,000,000 marshmallows. I thought I was gonna throw up. It was the greatest day of my life. Say, do you kids want to hear a joke? Mrs. Meyer asked as we were toasting our marshmallows. Oh no, not again. Mrs. Meyer's jokes are awful. Did you hear about the fire at the circus? She asked us. No, we all replied. It was intense, said Mrs. Meyer. That was the whole joke. I didn't get it. Of course it was intense. It was at the circus. Mrs. Meyer's jokes make no sense at all. After we finished all the marshmallows, Mrs. Meyer just sat there, staring into the fire without saying anything for a long time. She looked all glassy-eyed. It was like she was in a trance or something. Fire is an amazing thing, don't you think? She finally said. It can be so useful and also so destructive. Like I said, Mrs. Meyer is weird. Chapter 8. The Truth About Mrs. Meyer. We were eating lunch in the vomitorium. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Michael had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Ryan had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Everybody had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I traded my peanut butter and jelly sandwich for Neil's peanut butter and jelly sandwich because his mom cuts the crusts off. You know what's weird? I told the gang. Sometimes they say that a house burned down, and sometimes they say that a house burned up, but it's the same thing. That's right, said Ryan. Whether your house burns up or down, you still have no house left. I'll tell you what's weird, said Michael. Mrs. Meyer. Yeah, we all agreed. She's always telling jokes about fire, said Alexia. Hey, I know a fire joke, I said. What do you call a doll that's on fire? What? Everybody asked. A barbecue. Everybody laughed. Neil the nude kid laughed so hard that milk came out of his nose. You know a joke is good if you can make milk come out of somebody's nose. That's the first rule of being a kid. I didn't see it, but annoying Andrea and crybaby Emily had just come up behind us. They put their trays on our table. Setting dolls on fire is not funny, Arlo, said Andrea. How would you like it if I set one of your action figures on fire? I did that last week, I told her. His face melted off. It was cool. Andrea and Emily sat down. Andrea had on her mean face as usual. What's eating you? I asked her. Did they cancel your clog dancing lesson for today? No, Andrea said. I'm worried about Mrs. Meyer. I think she likes fire a little too much. Yeah, did you see the look in her eyes when she was staring into the campfire? Asked Alexia. It was creepy. I think Mrs. Meyer is obsessed with fire. Maybe she's a pyromaniac, said Andrea. You mean she really loves eating pie? I asked. Everybody laughed, even though I didn't say anything funny. No, dumbhead, said Andrea. A pyromaniac is somebody who can't stop setting fires. I knew that, I lied. Hey, maybe Mrs. Meyer isn't a real firefighter at all. Maybe she's an imposter. Stop trying to scare Emily, Andrea told me. Yeah, maybe Mrs. Meyer is a pyromaniac who is just pretending to be a firefighter, said Michael. I'm scared, said Emily. Maybe Mrs. Meyer kidnapped a real firefighter and tied him up in an abandoned barn, said Neil. Stuff like that happens all the time, you know. And she's about to set the barn on fire, said Ryan. I saw that in a movie once. She'll probably set our school on fire, I added. We've got to do something, Emily shouted, and then she went running out of the room. Sheesh, that girl will fall for anything. Chapter 9. Mrs. Meyer is a liar. Actually, Emily was right. We did have to do something. If Mrs. Meyer was going to set the school on fire, a lot of people could get hurt. There was only one thing for us to do. We had to go talk to Mr. Klutz. After lunch, the whole gang and I skipped recess and went to Mr. Klutz's office instead. Well, we didn't just go to his office. We snuck down the hallways, ducking into doorways along the way, so Mrs. Meyer wouldn't see us. It was exciting. There was electricity in the air. Well, not really. If there was electricity in the air, we would have all been electrocuted, and that's even worse than catching on fire. But we were slinking around like secret agents. It was cool. Mr. Klutz was standing in front of his office, talking to some parent. Blah, blah, my daughter, blah, blah, said the parent. Blah, blah, she won't do it again, blah, blah. Blah, blah, thank you, blah, blah, said Mr. Klutz. Blah, blah, we appreciate your blah, blah. Grown-ups are really boring. After 1,100,000 minutes, the parent finally said goodbye to Mr. Klutz and left. What can I do for you kids? Mr. Klutz asked us. Aren't you missing recess? We have an important question we need to ask you, said Andrea. Is Mrs. Meyer the real firefighter? Said Mr. Klutz, scratching his head as if he had any hair up there. We're afraid she's a pyromaniac who kidnapped a real firefighter, I told him. She probably tied him up in an abandoned barn, and she's about to set it on fire. Said Mr. Klutz, scratching his head again. He must have had a rash or something. Mrs. Meyer told me she's a real firefighter. She looks like a real firefighter. She talks like a real firefighter. But I can't be completely sure. Maybe you should ask her to prove that she's a real firefighter. Yeah, Alexia said. Let's make her prove it. Yeah, we all agreed. Where is Mrs. Meyer? Asked Andrea. Oh, she's not here, said Mr. Klutz. She said she wanted to take the rest of the day off, but the fire chief told her she had to go to the firehouse for an important meeting at 3:15. Important meeting, I said. Mrs. Meyer is a liar. I bet she didn't even go to the firehouse because she's not a real firefighter. She's a fake. That's when I got the greatest idea in the history of the world. I looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Neil. Neil looked at Andrea. Andrea looked at Alexia. We were all looking at each other because we all had the same genius idea. Important meeting, 3:15. We get out of school at 3 o'clock. We were going to spy on Mrs. Meyer.